what's the part that you are afraid about? What's the part you cannot afford? And then by being a digital nomad in a way, now with technology being like widely available and free, if you talk about like effort from a monetary standpoint, you can probably go to Chiang Mai, meet with Christoph and all of those digital nomads when they get together every winter, and you will see that it's not as bad as you can. I think people will be pleasantly surprised that it's more affordable than they think it is.
This episode of the Nomad Summit Podcast is brought to you by GigSky, who just launched their most innovative product to date, GigSky One, the new eSIM subscription for digital nomads. Learn more on gigsky.com.
Welcome to a new episode of the Nomad Summit Podcast. And this is again one co-hosted by Palle and myself. My name is Christoph and today we have Cedric with us, a very interesting guest who's been around our community for ages. And he runs the blog nomadnumbers.com. He's been on the podcast of Johnny FD, our original founder of Nomad Summit. And actually, when preparing for this podcast episode here today, I listened into this old episode from end of 2020 that you, Cedric, have recorded with Johnny. And I guess your journey since then has been super interesting after all that COVID and lockdown. You were in Asia, you were in Taiwan back then. So maybe let's start right there and with your personal journey since COVID and through COVID.
Yeah, so I was talking to Johnny. I think we just arrived in Taiwan, and we're probably talking about Taiwan and all of the great things about it. So yeah, we were just 2 years into our nomadic journey, and we were in Bali right before the pandemic, March 2020. So rather than heading back home, which for us was the US at the time, because I spent the last 10 years before becoming nomadic in Bali.
I was there as well at the same time, Cedric.
Oh, you were in Bali?
Yeah, I was in Bali, and then I went to Nomad Summit in Chiang Mai, and then I went back to Bali to spend some more time there. That's when the whole pandemic thing started to happen. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you were that week prior when people were saying, oh, you have to go back home. A lot of our friends said, oh, no, we're just going to stay in Bali. It should be pretty chill. Yeah. A lot of the people there were telling us, oh, no worries. But then there was a lot of airport shutting down and stuff. So anyway, we made it to Taiwan. Got super lucky because basically for about 2 years, there was not really any issue with the virus. So we were able to, we live in Taiwan with no lockdowns. We felt super safe to the point that we managed to get residency there. So now I'm a Taiwanese resident with the gold card. And 2 years after that, we resumed our nomadic journey. So then as things starting to reopen, we've been slow nomading, which basically what we've done since 2018. So usually going from 1 to 3 months per location, starting to slow things down a little bit. I think we prefer 2 to 3 months over 1 month because doing that for like more than 7 years now, it's easier when you spend longer period of time. Yeah, and I think we've done, some things around, I would say we've been to 90 places over 7 years. So it's not a ton for that amount of time, but it is, I think out of those places, we really find some that we are like to call home, like Taiwan, obviously. Chiang Mai is one of them, Da Nang, which we also were lately. And we're in that search of that kind of home base that we haven't fully found. Ideally, we would like to do the winter in Europe, in Asia, and the summer in Europe.
And when you say we might just mention that you're traveling with your wife.
Yeah. So myself and my wife have been on that journey since 2018.
And that's a pretty impressive journey, especially when you look into the development over time on your blog, nomadnumbers.com. So you've seen a lot of places and you've been very, very transparent about your spendings, your income streams. What was the starting point when you decided like, no, we are not living this local life anymore. We want to explore the world. Mm-hmm. What was that process looking like on your side to getting from one point to the other?
Yeah. So I'll take a little bit of a step back. So I grew up in France. And then shortly after graduating, that was like 2004, I started working as a software engineer for a company in France. That company got acquired by Yahoo. So that gave me the opportunity to move to Silicon Valley in 2008. And for a software engineer, the Silicon Valley, when you're especially in Europe, seems like the Eldorado, like the best place with all of the big company, the Google and the Facebooks and all of that. So so I moved there in 2008, and for about 10 years, I was just working 9 to 5 as a software engineer. Then 2016, that's where I've met my wife, and the genesis story was that she grew up in the US, so she has the American culture. I grew up in France with more European culture, and we decided, why don't we take a year off to travel, just like a sabbatical year? And we started talking about budget, and we had two different numbers. Like for her, it was like, you need 100,000 or more, like to travel for a year. I was like, no, if you give me like 20, 40,000, can probably do a lot. So we started doing research into travel, world type of travel. And that's where we started stumbling upon basically two types of people that were doing it for a long period of time. So there was the digital nomads, and there were the people on that financial independence path. So it was two different ways to, get to a relatively similar outcome to basically living your life on your own term. Through a bit of luck and not really spending a lot, by the time we realized the financial independence stuff, we realized, actually we did save a lot. So we could decide to buy the house and then get stuck with a mortgage for 40 years, which like premium, like very expensive monthly repayment of the loan, or we can take that money, invest it, and use most of the proceeds to basically travel, and then reduce our time to work, like to buy a lot. And so that's what we did. And so it took us a year to do a ton of research, but in 1st of July of 2018, we decided to leave everything, get rid of our apartments, get rid of 95% of our stuff, and then we're starting our nomadic journey. And we've been on that journey since then.
I was looking at your website, and on your About page, you have a question, isn't travel something that's expensive? And I've been a nomad for 9 years, and I can't count the number of times people say, you must be rich, or did you win the lottery, when they hear about my full-time travel. Have you had that happen? And what's your response when people say that?
So I guess I think it depends. So the blog is more geared towards American. And so I think cost of living are a bit different between what an American spending and what European will spend. But nevertheless, I think we spend half. I think the tagline of the blog is like, we spend half. For half of the money we used to spend in San Francisco, we basically get to travel the world. We used to spend up to 60,000 USD in San Francisco just to live and going to work and stuff. And then I think our first year we spent 40,000.
You mean together?
So for two people, correct. All of those numbers are for the two of us. So you can divide by 1.6 or maybe 2 if you're by yourself. But so that's kind of, we started spending that. I think now we're spending a bit more. But I think now we're spending, like last year we spent 46,000, but there is a big jump because we spent 10,000 in longevity, quote unquote, type of stuff. But if you remove that, we are still at 34. So our average, I think it's like, we're in between that 25K range seems to be in USD. Seems to be how much we've been spending. And that has been, over 7 years, even though we go to different places, cheap places, expensive places, that seems to be the cost. So we didn't join company that IPO and stuff. We just save for like 10 plus years, and so that was already living in the Silicon Valley, you get to save a lot more money than in Europe. So I think that gives us a head start to save that money, but also just the travel itself, irrelevant of how much money you have, it's still in that range.
Cedric, I can totally relate to that. I just ran the numbers before we jumped on this call of my 9 years of nomad life and compare it to my fixed expenses I had back home, mortgage, utilities, insurance, my car. And I compare that with my nomadic expenses for accommodation and transport and insurance. So basically everything before food and pleasure in both cases. And I found that I spent 65% on average per month compared to what I spent when I lived in Denmark.
I think that's an impressive number if you run that, and also a big part of the misconception that many people have when they look at this traveling lifestyle from the perspective of someone who goes traveling for vacation. So someone who lives in a place, has an apartment, a house, so has a mortgage or a rent that keeps to be paid while they are away. And when they are traveling, they're full-time traveling, meaning like they do all the tourist activities. They do maybe some outdoor sports, going on for a hiking trip one day and having a course for windsurfing or kite surfing the next days. So they are constantly spending on all these kind of things to keep themselves entertained through the days, and are not factoring in this completely different situation that someone has who has given up all those obligations back in their home country. So you're not paying any mortgage or rent anymore, local insurance, car maintenance, and all these costs that you have that are tied to living in a place. And also, as digital nomads, as remote workers, we are not doing a kite surfing course every single day. For most of the week, we're sitting down and work. And we have those activities on our weekends and in our free time. I mean, yes, many of us are able to reduce their workload below a 60 hours work week, but still there is an important part of just doing the same thing, just in a nicer place at lower expenses. And so I guess, Cedric, you still started that with having your previous job, just you were working remotely in the IT industry. Is that still what you do today, or where's your main income coming from?
So regarding income, actually, so my wife kept her job. She was working for a company that was fully remote. So she did that for 9 months, and then she pretty much stopped. For me, when I started, I quit completely because my job was, I was working for a tech company and they didn't really give me the opportunity to be fully remote, which is what I wanted. We were fortunate enough that we basically retire early. So at this point, since 2018, we've not been significantly working. Yeah, we took all of that money we saved and we basically put it on the stock market, pretty much in like investments which are kind of safe. So we had that luxury of basically living the day the way we want them. We do work on projects like, for me, the blog and various other things like the tools I've been building to help with tracking budget and showing to people that, yeah, if you get to travel slowly, it's going to cost you less than you think. So that's where we are currently in terms of work-life balance.
You mentioned the tool that you built, Nomad Purse app. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the very beginning, we were not sure whether or not we were able to live out of our basically passive income. So we said, okay, we need to track how much we're spending on this. We make sure we can stick with our budget. I think our budget was around 40,000 for a year. So we started tracking towards that. And I started doing spreadsheets, which is like the easy way. But because I wanted to get very specific details and you have to convert money when you go to different countries, the spreadsheet became, after a while, like still a lot of overhead. So as a software engineer, I said, okay, I need to build a tool. There was a bunch of tools, but you have to pay to the currency conversion and stuff. I was like, I have time. So that's basically where Nomad Purse came about. It's a tool for digital nomads or everybody that travels in various countries that want to have a very clear, trying to understand exactly how much they spend and where is their spending going towards. So that's where the tool came about.
So you basically built it for yourself.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. All of the things I build usually are something I need. And then I put it out there. If people want to use them, I'm happy to do it. And one of the benefits, and that might not relate to all of your audience, that we've been using to reduce our spending is credit cards. People call it credit card rewards or credit card hacking. So it's the ability to open credit card in the US and you can basically get all of your flight covered for free. So we probably save like up to 6,000 to 10,000 a year in flight because we don't pay any of those. So I'm going to add that on the tools as well because we have to open something like a dozen credit cards a year and then you have to close them. And again, I'm using spreadsheet and I've missed 1 or 2 deadlines when I'm supposed to like close the card. So that's coming up next. But yeah, every time there is a problem I cannot find a good solution. I'm just building it and then, yeah.
Do you think nomads are good at tracking their expenses, or do you think that's where a lot of nomads go wrong?
Well, it depends, but usually people will just look at their bank statement and use that to track. So that can work if you're in a country like the US or like when you pay everything with credit card. But like if you go to a place like Vietnam, when I was earlier this year, and you do a lot of things with cash, then you have to manually start tracking. So it depends on people. I know people that will open a spreadsheet on their phone and track every time they do something. but some people won't do it, and then they have no idea how much they spend. And like with budgeting, the first things you want to do, like when you start doing your budget, then you realize, oh wow, there is all of that money I'm spending monthly on the subscription or like on those things. And then you can realize that you can reduce actually a lot of your spending once you start having the data that's from how much you're spending.
Yeah, I feel a little bit guilty on this. I often see people with these elaborate trackings. Mine is a bit more simplified. I mean, I'm very conscious about subscriptions. There's not much more than my health insurance and my Spotify premium account. But for everything else, I know roughly what I'm willing to spend per month. So I have a monthly total budget, and that translates into a daily budget. And so I know whenever I spend something, is this day within my budget? Is it above or below average? And I feel always a bit like if I overspend one day, then I need to underspend a bit the next couple of days. But in total, that's how it works for me. But I see the value of an app like yours, absolutely.
Yeah, I am so bad with my subscriptions. I have no idea. I have a feeling that if I really looked into it, I'm spending way too much on different subscriptions that I might not even use that often. But on the other hand, I do track every single time I do a transport, either a flight or a bus or anything like that, and also my accommodation. And I put that into a spreadsheet, and it's so interesting to see. At some parts of my journey, I've spent very, very little. And then I can see, okay, that's the time I landed this new client that paid me really well. So I could see that my expenses went up. And then once I didn't do that anymore, they went down again. So that's also another thing that the people who want to become nomads, they don't think about, that when you're a nomad, you have so many more dials and knobs to turn. If you're low on budget 1 month, you can go and live in a place where things are cheaper. You can do a lot more slow travel, and you can do house sitting. And there's so many other things that you can do. But when you're living and you're paying your fixed expenses every month, you have to pay that every month. And if you're having a slow month, you can't really say, well, I'm not going to pay my rent this month.
Yeah. And actually another thing we were putting on the tool, I don't know if you saw that, if you don't log in, we're just sharing the cost of living in each of the place you've been to. So that way people can see, if I have like 10,000 a year, those are the country I can be. I mean, it's based on our cost of living, but ideally, the idea will be we'll crowdsource if people want to share their data by sharing their budget. So then you can see on the map, those places will cost me maybe in the 5,000 to 10,000 range a year. Those places will cost me in the like 15 to 20 and so on. So then people showing them those information, you can live in Chiang Mai for less than 10,000 a year. People are like, what? So just start the conversation around like, yeah, you can be in places when you can really live for much less than maybe where you are working from. And so if you are still working remotely, then that's a good geo arbitrage opportunity, because if your client, let's say, are in the US or in Europe and you are in Asia, then your saving rate will increase significantly if you get based in Vietnam or in Chiang Mai, for instance.
So you would know where the cheapest places are to live.
Yeah, and everyone on the tools can see that because it's public. So I'm sharing all of my numbers. I've been working with other bloggers, so there is also their cost of living there. If you can look into those. But yeah.
So if we want to save money, where do we go?
The cheapest we've been to has been Siem Reap. And then Malaysia, Georgetown was also very affordable. Hanoi, Chiang Mai, Waraka City, Ubud, Da Nang. Those were some of the cheapest places we've been to. On the most expensive side, I mean, places like Seoul as you would expect, or Sydney, even Lisbon, it's more than twice of that.
Even Lisbon?
Yeah. Right now I'm seeing 18,000 per year for Lisbon. I think we went there back in 2019 and we were living in the center. So I think our Airbnb was quite pricey. Yeah.
But you can land really good deals in Lisbon.
In the center or outside? Because we are like really right in the center. So I think we probably pay that premium, no?
And that's an interesting point here, as this is just like very individual data and not like normalized by bigger numbers. And that's where you really got my attention now. I know that myself, sometimes I land a better deal, or I know a region, an area already. So for example, whenever I stay in the Lisbon area, I kind of fell in love with Seychelles. So this little village on the other side of the Tejo River. It is basically like a small Portuguese village just by the waterfront, with an 18 minutes ferry connection over to downtown center of Lisbon. And you have the sunset in this direction. So you can sit by the waterfront in a small, local, affordable restaurant, look over the water and see the skyline of Lisbon and the Red Bridge of the 14th of April in the sunset view. That's amazing. I really love that. And also on this side, the accommodation is much, much cheaper. And I regret already instantly that I gave this away because now all our listeners will use the same trick.
I'm taking notes, Chris.
I'm taking notes as well. Yes.
But again, this is like, now I've been to Lisbon so many times and this is my local knowledge. That means I'm now able to get better deals on a location where I know I don't need to be downtown all day, every day. I can get there easily with this 18 minutes ferry ride, which I enjoy anyway, being on the water, and then be back in a cozy village on the other side and pay cozy little village prices. So that means this would distort my personal calculation in comparison to other people. So if they want to draw their conclusions on how much does Lisbon cost, that's a bit tough then if they don't have this background of how I travel there, what I enjoy. And the same applies to yours. But you mentioned now with the user base of your app, you get normalized data over time and a more true indicator for the cost of living in average, maybe like cutting out all these edge cases and get a solid number base. Is that one of the goals that you have with your app?
Yeah, because I started looking at those apps like Nomad List, for instance, that that do cost aggregation, and those numbers didn't make sense to us. So yeah, the idea was like, if people use the app, and if they have to opt in to share their information because there is some privacy, like you don't want to obviously, even though the data is anonymized, I think so. If you opt in, then yeah, you can be in our maps and you can contribute to that. Nomad List was for me didn't make any sense, and then also, I'm trying to normalize the cost by removing things which are not part of the cost of living. So the flight, because if you came from Lisbon, from the US versus from France, then that would be up. So there is things like costs which are not cost of living in Lisbon that are automatically excluded. So hopefully it's a bit more fair than just say, oh, I went to Lisbon and this is everything that came out of my checking account from when I was based in San Francisco. Because there will be some noise into that, like let's say like flight, airfare. If you are buying stuff like travel gear, let's say if you buy a new laptop like that year when you are in Lisbon, from Lisbon, it's not really the cost of living in Lisbon, just like something you need for your long-term travel. So there's a few categories like that are considered outside of cost of living, so they are not included when you do that aggregation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. A quick break and a thanks to our sponsor, GigSky, who just released their most innovative product to date, GigSky One, the eSIM subscription designed for digital nomads. With GigSky One, you no longer need to buy separate data plans each time you cross a border. Instead, you get one subscription that works seamlessly around the world. You can choose what fits your journey, a flexible monthly plan, or save more by 3-month and 12-month options. No contracts, no hidden fees, just reliable global data that travels with you. Whether you're spending a week in Bali, a month in Berlin, or hopping between hubs all year long, GigSky One makes it easy to stay online and focus on what really matters: your work, your adventure, and your freedom. Stay connected wherever your journey takes you. Download the GigSky app today and check out GigSky One at gigsky.com. Link in the show notes.
And you touched another point earlier with these credit card bonus points and tricks. Mm-hmm. I guess that is something that is very much for US users.
US residents, yes.
Because credit cards in other places don't really come with those perks. I mean, you can get points, and I also have a credit card that is tied to an airline and I get airline points there. But it's not really, if I listen to what US users talk about when it comes to points and how you can redeem them, and I look at what I get with my Portuguese top credit card, it's like, what the heck? So it doesn't make sense.
I think people in the US, and I don't know how long this is going to last, but every time you open a card, they basically give you 1,000 USD, 750 to 1,000 USD on a travel card just by opening it and doing the minimum spend. So if you do that once a month, it's, you easily get to 10,000. I mean, there's two people there, so we can open anywhere from 5 to 12 if you spread your spending to it. Usually the minimum spend is about 3,000 in average. So if we spend 30,000 a year, you can do that on over 10 cards. So that's, you recoup a bunch of money. So yeah.
You've written a blog post about how slow travel can dramatically cut cost, even when you're traveling in expensive regions like Europe. What are some of the biggest money saving wins that you've discovered when traveling in Europe?
So I think, and it's not very specific to Europe. I think it can apply to most places, but starting to live in a place for a month, for instance, we mostly use Airbnb as soon as we stay in a place for more than 5 days. So what we do is we always talk to the host. So we have a conversation. I have actually a template of things that we ask. So this is the things we want, like kitchen wise, or we are checking things around noise and stuff. And then we always try to negotiate. Hey, we're staying there for a month. We see that usually most of the people that stay at your place are less than a month. So we understand about vacancy rate and stuff. So will you be willing to, this is our budget, will you be willing to get closer, to give us a further discount? So that's usually a big selling because accommodation, I think, is by far the biggest categories of spending for us as we travel. But then as Christoph mentioned, because we don't live as regular tourists, that we do everything within a week, we have time on our side, right? So instead of paying a guide to do a fancy 2 or 3 day trips going around the entire town and whatever neighborhoods around, we can do that ourselves. So we can save a lot into, we just take the local transportation and go to see that temple or go to see that site or whatever attraction there is. So I think that's also a good money savings. We love to walk, so that might not apply to everyone, but and we love to hike as well. So a lot of the things we like to explore by foot, many places. So again, we don't really have to spend on, fancy tour to do things. So I think those are some of the one from top of my mind that I can think of. And then, we cook at home as well. So we don't eat at restaurants every single day. So going to the grocery store, making our own food, which also has some health benefits. Help us reduce our food bill as well.
I'd like to just circle back to what you said about negotiating with the Airbnb host if you stay there a month, because normally there is already a monthly discount.
Correct.
I remember at one point I'd booked a place for 3 weeks, and then I said, no, I'm going to stay longer. So I changed my booking to 4 weeks, so a month. And I got money back because 4 weeks was cheaper than 3 weeks, which is crazy. So even though you get this automatic monthly discount, you would still negotiate and ask for more?
I think we are trying to aim for 30 to 50%. That's kind of the rules. So people will sometimes put 5, 10, 15%. I mean, they understand, right? If you have vacancy and then if you have cleaning fees and you have to check in with your guest in and out, I think if even we get 50%, people who are still getting, for them, it's a peace of mind because they are paid for the month, and it's not really very often having them to find 2 or 3 guests over 4 or 5 days.
Do you offer them anything I can help you take some new pictures, or I can help you write a better description, or do you offer anything?
So we look at the discount, right? If the discount is 5 or 10%, we ask. If the discount is already 50%, we don't. But no, we haven't been offering things of that sort. We've been pretty good response rate on that. And now we have a good track histories of being to many places. We've done it a couple of times, but it was more on after the fact things when people were starting. Because when people start on Airbnb and there was no review, on that way, we're a bit more aggressive, saying, we are taking a risk. We don't know what you guys are doing. And then after the fact, when we have a nice surprise, usually we are in Munich this summer and those guys were starting their Airbnb. So we give them a bunch of feedback to help them moving forward.
When you mentioned that you're going to places that have no reviews yet. So I heard only indirectly, but never firsthand, of a lot of scams happening there as well. Have you ever been scammed, or did people try to scam you with a new listing of a place that in the end actually didn't exist or look completely different or something like that?
So we try to avoid that as much as possible because, like you said, there is usually a lot of issues. We do, however, spend a lot of time exchanging with the host, and we usually start with the first questions are about like the place and questions about kitchen and stuff. So if we feel there is a bit of bad vibes and people that we like to scam are not going to go into great detail, I guess, into like answering all of your questions. So then this negotiation gets to the ends. So by then, we try to get vibes, but we haven't done a lot. It's probably like 10% of our bookings, 5 to 10% is very few. But it's definitely a risk, and I would not recommend people to go with booking with no reviews.
So before we wrap it up, Cedric, if somebody listening to this is thinking, I would love to become a digital nomad, but I can't afford it, what would you say to them?
I mean, it's a loaded question because what can't you afford? I think if you are intentional into your life, you can always find a way to do what you want. Basically, you design your own life. That's kind of what we did when we did that big jump. Like, it was very scary, like to quit the 9 to 5 and we have comfortable situation and places. So I will ask those person, what's the part that you are afraid about? What's the part you cannot afford? And then by being a digital nomad in a way, now with technology being like widely available and free, if you talk about like effort from a monetary standpoint, you can probably go to Chiang Mai, meet with Christoph and all of those digital nomads when they get together every winter.
In January.
Get inspired like I did. And then you will really find it's not as scary or as impossible. A lot of people have like, when we were starting having that budget discussion with my wife, it's like, it's going to cost that much. No, it's usually not. So just go there, like just take 2 weeks, meet those people, and you will see that it's not as bad as you can. I think people will be pleasantly surprised that it's more affordable than we think it is.
And actually, if I can't afford something, that always comes with two sides of the coin. One is whether the cost is too high for what I have, or I don't have enough. So you have two levers. You can whether drive the costs down or work towards driving your income up. And that's, I think, the much bigger lever. So most people who say they can't afford something don't really have a spending problem, but rather an income problem. And that is one that can ideally and best be solved by inspiration, by exposing yourself to the right community, to people that are role models, that are ahead of that they have done it and share their very own story. And that is exactly what Nomad Summit is for. What we want to do with this weekly podcast here and what our big events are for. So if you are at that stage where you think, I need inspiration for how I can make a location independent income, I can make a living that allows me to afford all these things, then subscribe to this podcast. Listen in every single week. We are sharing these stories here. And if you want to save money, get your super early bird ticket for the next Nomad Summit event. As of the day when we publish this podcast episode, we are still in the early bird phase for the January 2026 Nomad Summit in Chiang Mai. So get your ticket early. They won't get any cheaper from here. And even though they are not refundable, in case you can't make it, they are transferable. So there is no financial risk for you, because if you really don't make it, you will always be able to find someone in the community who will want to get your early bird ticket at a good price from you later on. So there is nothing holding you back. Get it now, save money, and come and meet all these people that are sharing their stories to help you to get to the next level.
Yeah, and if I may add, that was the first conference I've done, even though we've been digital nomad for so long, because I knew Johnny and I missed I could not make it before he decided to take a break during COVID. But anyway, so I've met Christoph and the team, and I think all of the people there was such a good experience. And like Christoph said, you met such a wide variety of people that you get very inspired. So I think it's definitely a really good investment for the price of the conference.
I will make sure in the show notes to include a link to your blog, and also a specific link to Nomad Purse. You made a video where you explain what the whole thing is about, and it looks super cool, and I'm going to look more into it and maybe start tracking all of my expenses and not just putting travel and accommodation on a spreadsheet like I do now. It's a really cool tool that you've built there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Cedric, for being such a wonderful guest. And that's it for today. Thank you, dear listener, for listening all the way until here. If you liked this episode, please share it with your friends. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast platform, wherever you get your podcast. Leave a comment, leave a review, and hear you next week.
Produced by radioguru.co.uk.
Christoph, how do you know that all the listeners are dear? Some of them might be scumbags.